Okay, we should be recording now. So welcome everybody. My name is Amy Maxey. I'm with Northern Colorado Clean Cities. We're really excited to have you all today here with us for the National Park EV Experience and Corridor Development Lunch and Learn. We have great speakers listed below. And while we get started, go ahead, if you haven't already, put your name, organization, and location into the chat. Just a little brief overview about Northern Colorado Clean Cities. We are a 501c3 organization sponsored by the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean City Program. And again, my name is Amy Maxey. I'm a program manager. We also have Diego Lopez here, who's the executive director. And a little bit about what is Clean Cities. Well, Clean Cities is a program sponsored by the Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office. And through that program, we really work to advance the energy, economic, and environmental security of the United States by supporting local actions to cut petroleum use in transportation. So we really highlight with unbiased information, alternative fuels. We can connect you to tools, and we're really working to reduce petroleum consumption. And by doing so, we reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions and can improve our air quality. Some specifics on what Northern Colorado Clean Cities does. Through our Clean Cities program, we can work on many different projects. We work to build out the alternative fuel infrastructure like EV charging stations. Along the corridors, we can offer technical assistance, coaching and training opportunities for consumers and businesses alike that are looking to reduce their petroleum consumption, as well as maybe look into alternative fuel vehicles. Another thing, we are a part of the Recharge Colorado program. So we really work to advance the adoption of electric vehicles and the installation of charging infrastructure through Colorado. And we do this through many different ways. So we have workshops, which we actually have an EV 101 workshop tonight. So if you're curious about joining that, go ahead and head on over to our website, or actually, Diego, if you could link that in the chat, that would be great. We also do virtual ride and drives, and since it is National Drive Electric Week, we also have a virtual ride and drive coming up this Saturday. We usually do in person, but of course we're trying to make sure that safety is upheld in our communities, so it's going virtual. Not only that, we have a group buy going on right now as well. So if you're near the Fort Collins or Loveland area, please reach out to us. We have many different discounts. We have 3 dealers now, I think, starting tomorrow that are involved in this. So you can find discounted EVs through that program. Really quickly, I am going to go over just the basics of electric vehicles for those of you who might not know. There's 3 different that we can talk about. So there's a hybrid electric vehicle. This is powered by an engine and an electric motor, but it runs on fuel. So you do not charge this or plug it in at all, but it does have a better fuel economy due to that electric motor. There are also plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. This is what we'll be discussing more today when it comes to Rocky Mountain National Park. So this is more like your Chevy Volt. It is powered by an electric motor and an engine. So it is powered with the battery gets powered through electricity. And once that battery is depleted, then it uses the gasoline engine. And then we have, last but not least, the all-electric vehicles. These are powered completely by the electric motor, and you do have to plug them in to charge. So these vehicles run completely on electricity, 0 fuel, 0 tailpipe emissions. But we are curious to hear from you as well. Have you driven in an EV? So we're using Pull Everywhere. So if you haven't used this before, there's some directions up at the top. You can go to pullev.com/Amy Maxey 282. And from there, you'll have the option to choose A for yes, you have driven an EV, B for no, you have not, C for yes, and I've also been in a passenger in one, or D, no, but I've been a passenger in an EV. So far, we've had people who have experienced driving in one. That's good. And if you need to text also, there is that option along the top as well. But I'll give you a few moments. Oh, wow, awesome. So it looks like most people have, a few have not, but they've been passengers, which is always fun too. I'll give this just another quick minute, but I am curious if you have any fun experiences or stories about even your EV. If you want to type that into the chat, I'd be curious to learn more. Wow, 36% have driven one. That's great. And if you're having any issues with Pull Everywhere, please also type that in the chat and I can help you. We will be using this feature a few times throughout this presentation. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and move on just to maintain our timeliness here. So I'll touch on these really briefly as well before we move on to our experiences with Rocky Mountain National Park. And we really just want to highlight these, and this is just an overview. There are so many different other financial opportunities out there for you if you're looking to either electrify, add charging stations at your business. Just connect with us and we can connect you to the right funding source. But to highlight a couple, we have Alt Fuels Colorado, and that can give you funding for alternative fleet vehicles. We have the Charge Ahead Colorado funding opportunity, which is actually going on right now. So it, well, starting tomorrow, I guess, October 1st, and it runs through the end of October. So if you're curious about this, or if you're wanting to add any charging stations to your workplace or anything like that, please get a hold of us because we can help you with this application since we are a recharge coach. Other opportunities, the Department of Transportation can help fund any transit buses through the Consolidated Call for Capital Projects. And we also have the Department of Local Affairs, which I believe Lenore will also touch on, but this is just funding for alternatively fueled vehicles and infrastructure for public fleets as well. Again, this is just 4 of the many different financial assistance programs that we can help you either electrify or move you to alternative fuel vehicles, pardon me. So on to the fun stuff. We worked with Rocky Mountain National Park in 2013 with the U.S. Department of Energy's Clean Cities National Parks Initiative. And that initiative was really to support alternative transportation projects aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and educating park visitors about the environmental benefits of reducing our dependence on petroleum. So through that, we partnered with Rocky Mountain National Park as well as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in order to apply for this funding. And the good news is that we were awarded. So our award was $167,500, and what that fund covered were 2 2013 Chevy Volts. Now those are plug-in hybrid vehicles like I mentioned earlier. So they have a 38-mile range just on the battery and electricity alone, but they have a total range of 380 miles. And we were also able to get 2 EV charging stations through that funding, as well as a propane truck. We are fuel neutral, so even though it's National Drive Electric Week, we do help advance other alternative fuels as well. But we do have other current projects too that we're working with. We've partnered with Utah Clean Cities with the Zion project in order to advance electrification in national parks. We also work closely with the town of Estes Park, which is right outside of Rocky Mountain. And they've done great work recently. They're working on their EV plan. So if you're curious, or Christy, if you want to go ahead and put any links in the chat, they're doing great work there with advancing EVs. So we recently reached back to Rocky Mountain National Park, and I spoke with Ranger Andy Gibbons on her experience driving the Chevy Volt that we were able to help get funding for. And this is what she had to say. So we're going to watch this quick video about her experiences. And then go ahead and let me know if you can hear it. There's no noise right now, but there will be soon.
Hi, I'm Ranger Andy at Rocky Mountain National Park, and I drive the Chevy Volt. Here at Rocky, we drive the hybrid vehicle daily. I'm the ranger that's lucky enough to be assigned to this vehicle for my normal duties, but we will also use it if we have longer trips, like if a ranger needs to go from Estes Park over to the Grand Lake side, which is about an hour and a half. Sometimes we'll drive it up to the Alpine Visitor Center, which is maybe a 50-minute drive. And often, if we need to pick somebody up from the airport or something like that, we will opt to use the hybrid vehicle rather than one of our regular cars. I really like the values behind driving a hybrid vehicle. I think it's pretty cool that I get to drive this around Rocky Mountain National Park and just show to our visitors and other employees of the park that as a science-minded agency and an environmentally minded agency, we are moving toward a greener future by implementing these types of vehicles into our daily use. When I first started driving the Chevy Volt, I was pretty surprised at how well it performs in the mountainous terrain. It's a pretty powerful vehicle, and it even does really well in winter driving conditions. One thing that really surprised me about driving the Chevy Volt is how quiet the hybrid vehicle really is. So my coworkers are always joking with me that I sneak up on them places because you really can't hear the hybrid when it's running at all. So now that you know a little bit more about the Chevy Volt, I'm going to take you to its parking spot and show you guys how to charge it. Charging the Chevy Volt is really easy. All you need to do is power the vehicle down. Make sure you take the keys with you. Grab the charging cable off of the port. Open the charge door and plug the cable in until you hear it click. And then you take the charge access card and swipe till you hear a beep. And when you see the blue light blinking, that's when you know the vehicle is charging.
Don't worry, I sped up the video here, so she's not really peeling out. Perfect. So that's been her experience working with the Chevy Volt, and it was a lot of fun. Oh, here, let me get out of here really quickly. Okay. Sorry about that. So anyway, we reached out to her, and we'll maintain contact, and see how else we can help their fleets, as well as help their education efforts with folks who visit the park. But for us, we really just want to be able to connect folks with resources. We have free memberships. You can become a stakeholder with Northern Colorado Clean Cities. If you have any questions about EVs, National Drive Electric Week, the workshop we're having tonight, or our virtual ride and drives and more, please reach out to us at any time. There is no such thing as a dumb question, and we want to hear from you. So thank you all very much. We're going to go ahead and follow it up with Lenore. So Lenore Bates has worked with the Colorado Department of Transportation as the Scenic and Historic Byways Program Manager since May of 2010. Her credentials include an understanding of grassroots collaboration and community building, and the ability to lead and develop specific programs. Current Scenic Byways work includes statewide promotion, wayfinding, corridor management plans, and collaborating with other agencies on the Electric Byways initiative. Thank you so much for joining us, Lenore. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Great. I wanted to say hello to everybody. I am going to turn off my video, and I keep it off just because of my internet connection, like many others, right? So I just want to highlight some of these photos at the top. The top left is the Cache La Poudre North Park. Right in the middle, we have the state capitol where we had some CDOT electric vehicles during Earth Day. And then to the far right is Pawnee Pioneer Trails. But I think that one's a little elongated to fit the space because the Pawnee, I mean, they're a little wider. So it's hilarious. So good afternoon. So I am, as she mentioned, Lenore Bates from the Colorado Department of Transportation and the Colorado Byways Program Manager. I want to say thank you to Northern Colorado Clean Cities for providing these workshops during this important week. I also believe that the byways link many of our interests across the nation, and it is very important to consistently reach out to keep each other informed and collaborate. Next slide, please. So Colorado Scenic Historic Byways Program was established in 1989 under legislation called ICE-T, and it immediately became a model for other programs throughout the country. It was a national funded program between 1989 and 2012, and possibly could be refunded by the Moving Forward Act early next year. If you want to follow that for more information, please follow either Scenic America or the National Scenic Byway Foundation. Furthermore, the Colorado Byway Symposium is now scheduled for May 5th and 6th, 2021 in Ouray, Colorado. We hope to see you there. Although each byway functions independently, CDOT's roadways and programs are the ribbon that connect them to create a positive experience for the traveler and an economic benefit to the state. The blue Columbine sign provides way showing for our visitors. Colorado has 26 byways, and 11 of them are nationally designated as America's byways. We also have 10 U.S. Forest Service byways and 2 BLM backcountry byways. These essential routes provide access to many national areas, including 8 national forests, 2 national grasslands, and even 4 national parks, including Black Canyon of the Gunnison, the Great Sand Dunes, First Mesa Verde, and Rocky Mountain National Park. Next slide, please. So do you recognize this place, the scenic view, or this byway? This particular place is the Dinosaur Diamond, and it's looking right at the Book Cliffs. This photo is by Kathy Edwards, and it was featured on the front of the September 2019 issue of 5280 magazine. I want to let you know that the Byways Commission does have a strategic plan. The commissioners do work with partners, agencies to address integrated planning for transportation, economic vitality, tourism, recreation, arts and culture, historic preservation, and conservation. This plan is located online on our webpage under resources. Most importantly, we have 3 primary goals that the commission really focuses on. One is to maintain a state byway system that is second to none. The second is to elevate our Colorado byway system to become a very important state asset for economic development and livability. And the third is to ensure that each local byway is a fully functioning part of an excellent statewide system. Next slide. So Clarion Associates completed the benefit of Colorado Scenic Historic Byways in 2013. What's important here is that there's 3 case studies, one on the Front Range with Gold Belt Tour, one in the middle of Colorado with Top of the Rockies, and the third case study addressed Unaweep Tabawatch over on the western slope. The second item was to improve our data collection and reporting, which resulted in a 2016 data analysis report, which generated how much impacts per byway that is generated from travel. The last and not least is enhancing partnerships, which I think is where this electric vehicle partnership ties in, not only to our agencies, but also to our visitors to Colorado. Next slide. The motivation and shift towards scenic drives has been on the increase for 5 years. Taking scenic drives is the second highest trip motivator for summer Colorado trips, second only to visiting a state or national park. Strategic marketing and research has provided most of this information here. We also have reasons for taking a road trip. It includes being able to stop along the way, the ability to pack everything in the car, exploration, and most of all, it brings families closer together. Next slide, please. So tying back into one of the goals is to ensure that each local byway is a fully functioning part of an excellent statewide system, which is goal number 3. This guidance helps organizations, our byway organizations that is, to have greater accountability in planning their work, tracking progress, measuring benefits and results, and even developing a written succession plan. That's a tongue twister. Next slide, please. Okay, tying into the Electric Byways Toolkit. It's a collaboration between state agencies in order to promote sustainable travel across our state. It's located on the Colorado Tourism Office's webpage. You just go to colorado.com. At the very bottom, you'll find a link to industry partners, and you'll look under the section, Work with Us. Next slide. I want to highlight this photo. It's the Netherland Visitor Center along the peak-to-peak Scenic and Historic Byway, and it uses renewable energy. An electric vehicle-friendly byway will guarantee that an EV driver can make the journey along the byway without worry about being out of a charge. Unlike refueling a conventional vehicle, EV charging is not limited to specific locations. They can be located anywhere on the byway that a tourist wants to stop, such as hotels, businesses. They'll be able to shop and dine, and then wait for their vehicle to charge. Next slide, please. So trip planning websites and apps allow for electric vehicle owners to seek out places to travel. In the near future, itineraries, press releases, and social media will be further developed to promote Colorado's electric vehicle byways. Next slide, please. Under the toolkit, the first agency is the Colorado Energy Office. You can also take a look at the statewide plan under that office's web links on that toolkit. There's charge ahead grants, as mentioned, for different levels, both level 2 and DC fast charging stations. And also by working with Colorado communities, recharge coaches, as Amy mentioned, can help create the ecosystem of broad support and resources necessary for a successful transition to electric vehicles. Next slide, please. Another photo I want to highlight is along the peak-to-peak again. It's the first user of the charging station in Allens Park at the gallery. It's a community hub. CDOT could also provide highway signage for eligible DC fast charging locations. Of course, they have to meet certain criteria. As mentioned before, Colorado Byways have plans, which are called corridor management plans, and they could include electric vehicle charging stations, and they can target electric vehicle owners for tourism and itineraries. Next slide. And here's another photo, recently installed charger at the Ice Park in Lake City. It's located along the Silver Thread Scenic and Historic Byway and also the Alpine Loop Backcountry Byway. The Department of Local Affairs supports electric vehicle-friendly byways and also Main Street communities in order to meet the governor's goals. The Colorado Main Street program may use their mini grants, which range between $2,500 and $10,000 per year, depending on their status, to leverage other funding for stations to be placed in downtowns. Main Street communities may also request assistance technical assistance from consultants to help them plan for and design electric vehicle solutions. On the other hand, for energy and impact assistance funds, communities can work with their regional managers. Next slide. Okay, this is my final slide. It was taken in 2016 in Oregon, and it shows an old pump that has been repurposed with a new EV charging station, which I think this is a great solution for historic locations. Remember, the Colorado Scenic and Historic Byways map is distributed through our office at CDOT. If you have any questions, please reach out via email. Many thanks to all.
Thank you so much, Lenore, and I love that photo. That is a great example of what we could move towards along those scenic byways. We have another polling question for you now before we move on to Alicia. So we are wondering, why did you or why would you purchase an EV? Which one is most important to you, or is it D, all of the above? So again, you'll just go to the pollev.com/Amy Maxey 282, or you can send the text using the option below. So would it be environmental benefits, financial savings regarding the total cost of ownership, energy security by reducing dependence on foreign oil, or D, all of the above? Give a few moments here, but it looks like most people are saying all of the above. They're all very important reasons. All right, about 86% saying all of the above, followed by just environmental benefits or financial savings. Okay.
And I didn't want to lose the question that Christy had really quickly, Amy. Funding sources for small work vehicles, such as what parks, streets, and fairgrounds would use for grounds works. It does actually depend on the location, at least in Colorado. So let's definitely get together. I know in Denver metro area, 7-county area around that will be different. But there might be some funding for vehicles, but primarily it is going to be for stations that we've presented on today.
Excellent. Thank you, Diego. Yeah, and if there's any similar specific questions geared for Wyoming, feel free to ask those as well. It might also, help if you have specific location-based questions just in the future to mention where you're at. But we know Christy, so. So moving on, we just toured a little bit of Rocky Mountain National Park and learned a little bit more about EV basics, but we're gonna head now to the Grand Teton National Park. And with that, I'm gonna introduce Alicia Cox, who is the Executive Director of Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities. She has been with the coalition since 2011, and Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities works to promote and advance alternative fuels in the transportation sector throughout the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities has secured over $2 million in grant funding to deploy alternative fuel vehicles and electric vehicle charging stations throughout the region. And Alicia is very passionate about these efforts, so we're really excited to have you today. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen here and get Alicia ready to go.
It says host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Well, let me just make you.
I guess, because I
Go ahead and try that now.
Okay. Can you all hear me?
A little quiet, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to talk louder. And I might There we go. Okay, well, thank you. Again, my name is Alicia Cox. I'm with Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities. This is a picture of a Chevy Volt there right in front of the Tetons. And I'm just going to talk a little bit here about our work with Grand Teton National Park and about what Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities program can offer. And I'm not going to talk too in depth about Clean Cities in general because Amy already covered that, but we are also a designated Clean Cities organization through the Department of Energy, and there's about 100 other coalitions like us throughout the country. So if anyone's on the call from outside our region, there's others that you can connect with if you have a different home national park that you want to help work with. Okay. So I also am just going to cover a little bit of, so why electrify our transportation? There's several reasons. I'm going to first talk about emissions here. So it looks like around 2017, this is from the Energy Information Administration, you can see that transportation becomes the largest emitter of CO2 emissions by sector, and the EPA also has that listed as about 28%. So there's reason to reduce those emissions. And then if we look locally, in Teton County, we commissioned a greenhouse gas emissions report, and actually 65% of greenhouse gas emissions in Teton County are attributed to ground transportation. So we have room to improve. When you look at that broken out, we have almost 40% is driving on state highways in Teton County, 34% is tourists driving to Teton County, 15% are folks driving in Grand Teton National Park, and 10% is just local roads. So if you see these two inner columns here, nearly 50% of the transportation emissions in Teton County is actually associated with travel to Grand Teton as well as Yellowstone National Parks. Most of the time, folks are here to visit both. So moving on, I'm just going to highlight some of our work here through the Clean Cities National Parks Initiative. And so this was a program that is unfortunately not operating at the moment, but we're still highlighting the efforts that we have accomplished in the past. So we worked with both Grand Teton and Yellowstone for applications that we were successfully awarded. And so in 2012, Grand Teton and Yellowstone were awarded 7 Ford Escape hybrids, 1 low-speed electric vehicle. This was a little gem that they used up at a ranch in northern Yellowstone. 1 medium-duty hybrid electric bus, and this was used to shuttle employees. 7 onboard idle reduction units, and funding for an idle reduction campaign. Then more recently, in 2014, we were awarded funding for Grand Teton and Yellowstone to have 6 publicly available electric vehicle charging stations and 4 plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. This image here is my Volt charging at Signal Mountain Lodge up in Grand Teton. And Yellowstone decided to have 1 Chevy Volt and 1 Ford C-Max Energy, and then Grand Teton, which we'll hear about more, they chose 2 Chevy Volts. And beyond the National Parks Clean Cities Initiative, I just wanted to highlight some of the support that we've been able to offer Grand Teton and other coalitions could offer their kind of respective national parks, as well as communities, like towns, businesses. We can work with whoever would like support on alternative fuels. But the support that we've offered for Grand Teton is we did a fleet analysis. We actually did one for the Greater Yellowstone Coordinating Committee, of which Grand Teton and Yellowstone are a part of, but that's includes Forest Service and Bureau of Land Management as well. We were able to connect them to funding through the Clean Cities National Parks Initiative, and we actually also worked with them with Volkswagen funding. And we provided some emissions calculations for them, and they'll be receiving 2 compressed natural gas refuse trucks. And then we also, Amy touched on this, but as Clean Cities organizations, we offer a lot of workshops and trainings and certifications. So Grand Teton National Park staff are able to attend and sometimes speak at some of our workshops. For example, last year we offered a compressed natural gas mechanic training And one of the mechanics from Grand Teton National Park attended that training. So now he'll have the knowledge to maintain these new CNG refuse trucks that they'll be receiving. And then a few months later, we offered a biodiesel workshop. And Grand Teton National Park has been using biodiesel for about the last decade, at least. And the same gentleman, he was a speaker at that workshop. So he was able to help educate and inspire some of the regional fleets that are also interested in using biodiesel. And then Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities, we offer a Green Fleet Recognition Program, and so Grand Teton, as well as Yellowstone, are recognized under that program. And this is just an example of these programs that we've worked with them on. So the two icons there, Protect Our Air, Please Don't Idle, that was a part of our first National Parks Initiative. And these were placed in the newspapers that are handed out when people enter the parks. We had handouts that were at each of the visitor centers. And then we also have decals that can be put on vehicles. So actually, if anyone's interested in these, they can ask us and we'll send them to you. And then this is just a screenshot of the cover of our alternative fuels feasibility study for the Greater Yellowstone Coordinating Committee. So again, just reiterating the support that we can offer. We provide objective, unbiased, alternative fuel information. We can provide national laboratory-backed resources. There's many tools and mapping resources on the Alternative Fuels Data Center website. We can provide free analysis. We can help connect to funding, connect to programs, and provide workshops, events, and trainings. So if there's anything that you are interested in, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to help you. And let's see, I hope this works. This is our video highlighting the electric vehicle experience in Grand Teton National Park. We spoke with Clay Hanna, and you'll be hearing a lot from him. So I'm just going to hit play.
Clay Hanna. I am the branch chief of visitor engagement here in Grand Teton National Park. We were very fortunate in 2016 to receive 2 Chevy Volts from the Yellowstone-Teton Clean Cities project through a grant. And we use these vehicles in our interpretive operations. So we'll use these vehicles to go to different programs, to staff different visitor centers in the park, and just to do some interpretive operation. Even use these vehicles in the winter. We're lucky to have a set of snow tires that we put on the Volts, which make it usable on the outside highway. I think what I enjoy most about driving the Volts is it does have a little bit of punch. Because it's an electric vehicle, there's really no transmission, so the power goes right to those front wheels. So it can definitely surprise you the first time you drive the Volt. It certainly has a little bit of punch. And of course, you feel good about driving it. It's an electric vehicle. We actually have 2 charging stations, one here at Moose at headquarters and one at Coulter Bay. So when it's sitting, it's constantly charging. So when we jump in it, you don't have to fill it up. It's ready to go, which is a really nice aspect. It's just a push button start. What surprised me the most was how it performs in the winter. I mean, it actually does pretty well. I can sometimes struggle on the really, really cold days when we're at -20 or -30. It takes a little bit of time to heat up, but actually having it plugged in means that it's ready to go and the engine's already warm. So you can just jump in and it's ready to drive down south for the day.
Great. And that is all that I have, but thank you to Clay for taking the time to speak with us about their experience, and we'll continue to catch up with them and hope that they're able to add more electric vehicles to their fleet.
Thank you. That was a really beautiful video. Some of those shots too are just so cute. Was that your little one at the end too?
Yes, I actually had, when we were plugged in, I thought I had taken a photo without him in it, but I didn't. And I wanted everybody to see the nice view that you have when you're plugged in at Signal Mountain. So you made an appearance. That's Owen.
I loved it. It's great. So we're going to go ahead and go back. We have another polling question before we move over to Brian. Let me. Okay, can you see this now? Oh, so we have another poll question, and we're just asking what other projects would you like to see Clean Cities partner with the National Park Service on? So this is, you know, your own ideas here. So you can enter in any different projects you might think would be beneficial. I see cute stickers listed. Mass transit, that's a good one. I'll give you guys some time. I know this one, you know, we kind of have to think a little bit more about, so.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there's some good ones here. Electric buses, seeing that quite a bit. Oh, I'm glad somebody mentioned the noise too. That's something that I love about electric vehicles. It's how quiet they are. Solar and storage, transit. Just another quick minute here for some of these ideas. Education for youth, love that. Collaboration. Some wonderful ideas. We are working, we do have a few projects too right now to try to electrify some of the shuttles and buses within national parks as well through Clean Cities and other funding opportunities. Benefits of EV for the environment, yep. Okay, great. We're gonna move on. If you have more ideas, we can go ahead and put them in the chat box as well. And we can move on. All right, to Brian. Brian Hall is the Outreach Program Manager for the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality. He manages the emission reduction and sustainability programs at DEQ. And to date, these programs have achieved a 67-ton NOx reduction statewide and have replaced more than 100 diesel vehicles in Wyoming. In addition, Brian works with a multi-agency team dedicated to planning and development of EV charging infrastructure. We're so happy to hear about the efforts that Wyoming is doing in terms of EV corridors. So thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Amy. Excuse me. Diego, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay. All right, great. So thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to speak with you all today. As I was watching the chat, I believe it's, forgive me if I mispronounce your name, but Corin Fisher had some really good points, which is Colorado is doing great, Wyoming not yet. And I agree. However, we are working hard to remedy that. And I'm glad I get a chance to update you all today. One other thing that was also said in the chat is right now you've got to go to Utah or into Idaho to get to the parks. And that's something that we have been discussing really since day one. How do we get people from the Front Range of Colorado all the way through our state into the parks in the Northwest? So we'll talk about that here today. EV charging in Wyoming is a collaborative effort. It has to be, and we'll get to that, the reasons why for that in a moment. But our team, myself, Mark Wingate and Dan Klein from YDOT, Sarah Young from the Wyoming Energy Authority, and David Eccles and Jason Buckland from EVIA, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Advisors. They've been a great help, and you'll see why here in a few minutes. This team here is, this isn't everybody. We certainly have had conversations with Alicia and the utility providers in Wyoming. We've talked with the electric co-ops. We've talked with municipalities and county governments. We really are trying to engage as many folks as possible, understand what their needs are, try to provide information on what it takes, where we would like to go, and just how do we work together to get there. I think that's really the most important thing. So we do have a great team assembled, and we're working hard to develop a framework, which we'll get to here in just a sec. If you could go to the next slide, please. This is just highlighting our corridors that we think are the most important priorities within the state. So, you know, as many of you might be aware, I-80 across the southern part of I-25, or across the southern part of the state, and then I-25 going from Cheyenne through Casper into the northern part of the state, obviously are top priorities for us. But one thing that's important to note is if we just electrified those interstates, we would do a really good job of getting people straight through Wyoming and no reason to stop other than to charge and grab a sandwich. So we need to make sure that we don't forget about those routes to you know, different parts of the state, and obviously into the Tetons and Yellowstone National Park, but also different parts of Wyoming. They're all very important to us. And you know, we're working hard to develop a good plan for that. So before we move on to the next slide, I just want to give you a little bit of history of how we got here. The group was formed really, you know, just kind of by accident, if you will. Wyoming received money through the Volkswagen settlement, and at the same time, YDOT was working on their alternative fuels corridor application, and the Rev West, which is the regional electric vehicle plan for the Intermountain West states. That group was being formed, to which we were a part of, and Wyoming's governor signed off on an MOU with those Intermountain West states that we were going to participate and be part of this effort. And I think that's great. That's really important for us to have that support. And we continue to participate in the Rev West. So, you know, as we started to have conversations with one another, we started to realize, oh my gosh, there is a lot more to this than we ever imagined. Our high level discussions about, you know, where to start and how to approach this quickly changed to how in the world do we do this? So, you know, we talked about things like space and amenities and maintaining sites and owner operators and how do you get power to these sites, and how do you plan for the future to expand if need be, because we all know that you know, as it's sort of a chicken and egg scenario, but as more folks adopt electric vehicles, there will be a need for more charging infrastructure. So how do we balance those things? So that's how we ended up working with EVIA, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Advisors. David Eccles and Jason Buckland have been so helpful for us. They were able to, you know, really give us a sense of all those little details and help us understand how it's going to fit together and how it's going to work, and you know, how we can use our funding to do that. And they're also working to develop you know, a lot of what goes into the statewide infrastructure plan. So if you could go to the next slide, please. This information is draft. We're still working on it, but this is an analysis of what's existing in Wyoming. And it doesn't take much to see that, or really it's primarily just Tesla chargers in Wyoming. So we've got a long way to go. If you go ahead to the next slide, you can see that this is where we believe that we need to start. And this is an analysis done by David and Jason, where they traveled to some of these sites. They looked at what infrastructure exists already, what are the gaps between these sites, where are the amenities, where is the power, all of those sorts of things that have gone into this analysis that shows this is the minimum of what we need to really provide that basic charging infrastructure for everyone. And then if you go to the next slide, this shows where we would start to fill in the gaps. And then if you go one more, this is kind of our very rough draft at a statewide infrastructure plan. So great point from Alicia. This information is still is all draft. It will change, and it's an old set of slides that I'm working from. So we will get those stations in Jackson, and there's one in Cheyenne too. I actually went by there just last week and talked to somebody who was charging their vehicle. So we'll get there. I want you all just to see where we're going here with our first take at what this framework for a statewide EV charging network would look like. Now, there's good news and bad news here. We at the DEQ are managing Wyoming's Volkswagen settlement funds, and many of you may be aware, within those settlement funds, you are authorized to use up to 15% of that for zero emission vehicle infrastructure. So Wyoming's allocation was $8.125 million. 15% of that is roughly $1.2 million. $1.2 million does not get us to install all of those points on the map that we're looking at right now. And for those of you that have done this type of work, it's not even close, right? So we've got a lot of things that we still need to work out, but I wanted to make you all aware that we're getting there and we're engaging as many folks as we can. So a great example of that is working with Alicia and understanding where would be the best place between Rock Springs and Jackson, for example, to locate a charger. So we don't want to close the gap too much. We want to find that sweet spot on that route and collaborate with her. For the Rev West folks, we want to make sure that Colorado and Utah, that we're taking into account, Montana, where they're locating their charging stations. So we don't put something too close to the border and create a smaller gap on one side where we don't need one. Things like that. And then I think it's really important that we develop a statewide plan, but also that we engage as many folks as possible who are interested in doing this. A great example will be the electric co-ops in Wyoming. We have had a number of conversations with them. Many of them have some funding and are interested in installing charging stations. And what we would like to do is make sure that we collaborate with them in that same vein that we are with everyone else. So our hope and our goal is that we can develop a statewide plan. We can provide it to the public. We can provide it to all of our partners. We can solicit feedback. And then we can all work together to implement as close to a statewide plan or a statewide charging infrastructure as possible. $1.2 million, like I said, doesn't get us very far. And one thing that we are doing is working on how we're going to use those funds. We have a funding plan in draft. We've talked about various scenarios like rebates or grants, depending on whether it's a DC fast charger, whether or not it's on the interstate, whether or not it covers one of those routes to the national parks, all sorts of ideas that we've been kicking around. We're still working on that. And we hope that we can, bring that funding plan in with our infrastructure plan sort of at the same time. And they really will go hand in hand, at least to get us going, get us started. And the idea, of course, is to really have that holistic approach with not just state agencies and utilities and co-ops, but municipalities, local governments, clean cities coalitions, anybody who we can engage and work with. We really are hoping to do that. So real quickly, we hope to have our infrastructure plan ready before the end of 2020, and we'll complete our funding plan to go with that as soon as possible, and provide that to you all and to anybody who's interested. And then the next steps, I believe, is to continue working with the team that we have here and engage other partners and continue to have these discussions in hopes that we can, move this thing forward. It's going to take some time, and there's a lot of work to do, but it also is really exciting, at least for me, and I know the other folks that are working on this. We're so happy to be part of this effort. We're so excited to do some of this work, and we want,
we do have a couple questions for you too. Not to interrupt, but we are getting close to 1, and I just wanted to get a couple of these questions directed at you answered, if that's okay.
Yep, let's do it.
We have a question from Charles asking if you are getting support from your power utility companies too, and if this plan includes interstate and highway rest areas. Oh, and people are also curious about the cost of installing a public charging station, which we can touch on as well. And I do really quickly just want to say, if you do have to run at 1, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we can answer these questions offline as well.
Great questions, Charles. And yes, we are getting support from the utilities. We actually had a project that we almost got started in Laramie working with Pacificor. They had some funding available. We had a deadline, that deadline came and went. We had problems because of COVID. It was sort of a perfect storm of things going wrong. So we did not get to pursue that like we had hoped, but we are working with them very closely, and we are looking at opportunities to build partnerships with the utilities. And then the interstate highway rest areas is an interesting scenario. We have talked about that. We have an issue with collecting fees at rest areas in Wyoming. I don't know all the details of how that works. Our folks at YDOT who couldn't be on today would be much better to answer that, but it is an issue, and we're working through those issues because obviously rest stops would be a great location for them. Although, if you follow the Tesla supercharger locations, they still hit the mark on spacing and also offer lots of those amenities. So we're looking at both of those scenarios. And then cost of installing a public charging station, lots of details go within that. It depends on whether or not power is available. And it also depends on, a number of factors like the type of equipment that we want to install, the amount of space, whether or not we have to do some construction work to create more space or change the location in some way. And then certainly also, a number of other things go in that with maintenance of the station and how you collect fees, those sorts of things. So anywhere from, let's say, $50,000 to $250,000 or more, depending on the type of site. So those evaluations are all part of our plan too, and our consultants, David and Jason, have done a really great job of helping line out all of those costs. So any other questions?
We have costs about remote areas. How have we addressed this issue? And some folks have mentioned solar can help with this issue. So far, I haven't seen any solar powered ones that get you the amount of charge that you might need for a corridor, but they can be helpful for, you know, getting you some miles. I don't know if Diego or Brian or Alicia, if you have any answer for that, but I know working with your utility is kind of number one.
Yeah, we have looked into that. There are a few companies that do this. One in particular offers a charger that comes with battery storage. So you don't need three-phase power at a site like this. You can just use 120 volt power, which charges the battery, and then that battery will support a number of fast charge sessions in a remote area. So, you know, we have to make sure that it's in a place where we can keep track of the amount of charging sessions that would happen there. But there are options out there for that type of thing. And Wyoming and wind they certainly go hand in hand, and we have looked into you know, the utilities that are installing wind projects in Wyoming, how that interacts with the grid and whether or not there's an opportunity for us there.
And perhaps that's really hitting on a funding opportunity announcement. So every year, you know, the Department of Energy comes out with funding opportunities. So we can connect you, of course, with those types of stakeholders that would address maybe the battery storage and solar needs for rural communities. And that would be a very novel idea and a really great idea. So work with, bring those ideas to us, and we'll try and see if we can apply for some funding.
And then another last quick question here, Brian. They're wondering if you're working with Montana DEQ to enroll a plan. Apparently there's some great people over there getting funding campaigns released, and they're close to getting a DC FAST plan out. So is there any collaboration with your department and Montana's?
Yes, that's an excellent question. There is collaboration with Montana, primarily part of the Rev West effort, but also I've talked with Kyla on a number of different projects. Her and I have been sharing information. And yes, we are working with Montana and Nevada. And when I say working with, I mean borrowing their ideas to be part of our funding plan. So we're certainly leaning on those states that are ahead of us, and we're evaluating everything that they're doing and borrowing a lot of those ideas to get us there.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead. There might be a couple more questions. I'm sorry if I missed it, but just to be aware of time, it is 1:05, and I know people have other meetings to get to. I went ahead and typed in our emails into the chat, and this was recorded, so we'll make sure to send this out as well to anybody interested. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. But if any of my wonderful panelists have anything else to say, feel free to do so. But I just want to say thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you for organizing everything.
Thank
Wonderful.
you. Thanks, Lenore. Thanks, Alicia. This was fun. Thanks for reaching out. Have a great day, everyone.